I'm going to talk about tonight is I guess I can share this much. I was talking with Kyle recently, and part of the direction that our conversation went into was, uh, I think, the genuine expression of practice. What is the genuine expression of your practice? This is a question that I've asked people in a way like, what is the fruit of your practice? Do you recognize the fruit of your practice? As a result of your practice, are you seeing greater freedom in your life? Is there a greater peace of mind? Is there a greater aptitude for letting go, for letting be, for accepting things as they are? And our conversation maybe didn't totally revolve just around that, but as I reflected back on our conversation and some of the things that we did discuss, it seems to be had an element of that there, of this kind of reflecting on what's the fruit of your practice. Because when I was first talking with Kyle, Kyle said, "How are you doing?" And I said, "Fantastic," or "Wonderful. I'm doing great." And he said, "You're always doing great. You're always doing wonderful." And it's true for the most part. I do genuinely feel great, wonderful. And he wanted to know how that's possible. And I've kind of gotten the impression that sometimes, for some people, it's like, is that genuine? Is it real? Do you really feel like everything's wonderful all the time? And I think the short answer really is that no, things aren't really wonderful all the time. But I think, honestly, it's a genuine expression of my practice. I really do feel like things are wonderful. Things are fantastic. They're great. I'm loving it all. And, in our conversation, he wanted to know, well, how is this possible? And I came up with two things as I reflected upon this in my own practice, because definitely I have, I can't say that everything's wonderful all the time, because, things change in ways that are unfavorable. There's the eight worldly winds of change, the vicissitudes, and, so in reflecting upon this, we thought maybe a good title for this talk would be How Not to Have a Bad Day. So that's the title of this talk, How Not to Have a Bad Day. What is it that you can do that might promote conditions that will result in not having a bad day? And as I reflected upon this, what I came up with was two things. Two things when I think about, this, what feels to me to be a very genuine expression when I'm asked, "How are you?" And I say, "I'm doing great. I'm doing fantastic." So these two things that I think play an important role is, number one, living a skillful life, living skillfully. So what does that mean? It means following the precepts. It means living with, living with the wisdom that you've cultivated through this practice, living aligned with the Dharma. So for me, living skillfully is the non-remorse that results from following the five precepts. When I am following the five precepts, there is this genuine sense of non-remorse. In other words, it kind of ensures that I'm avoiding drama. To put it in kind of a contemporary frame, there's no drama bombs going off in my life. There's no lamenting of things that I've said or how I acted. It's just living skillfully. And a way to ensure that one is living skillfully is to follow the five precepts. And in following the five precepts, I think, generally you hear this, that the five precepts are not rules. They're not rigid rules to follow. They are guidelines for practice. The wonderful thing about practicing these five precepts, protecting your sila, is that it requires mindful attention. You need to be mindful in order to follow the five precepts. And then as a result of following the five precepts, there is the cultivation of that mindfulness. So it really supports the continuation of mindfulness, being present, really recognizing and being very considerate and thoughtful in your actions and what you say and how you're conducting yourself. And it results in this non-remorse. That's one way of how not to have a bad day. So you have to think in a kind of a karmic strategy. You have to think with some karmic strategy with this, because we may not see the results of following the five precepts immediately. You might see it immediately. You might recognize, wow, look, as a result of not taking that action, of refraining from doing harm, the mind is calm and peaceful. You might see it in some sort of immediate sense if you're mindful. But you might also recognize it as time goes on. You might just look at the last week and think to yourself, thank goodness I conducted myself in the way that I conducted myself. And a lot of the learning that goes into this, again, it comes back to being mindful, being present in your life, so that you are really recognizing the first noble truth. When you live outside of this this aspiration not to cause harm, when you say something unskillful, hurtful, harsh, when you act in a way that is unbecoming of a noble one, unbecoming of one who practices the Dharma, you see the immediate results of that. You see the results. And if you're looking back over the course of a week, you see like, wow, I wish I had done things differently. And that remorse is a wholesome state of mind that can be something that directs you to course correct. It's not a deep regret where you shame yourself, but that sense of remorse is really just, I wish I had done things differently. Let me do things differently going forward. Let me, in other words, course correct. Those are valuable lessons in life, and a lot of times we might miss them if we're not being mindful. We might miss those wonderful opportunities to really learn from those things. One of the kind of analogies I made when I was talking with Kyle is it's like standing in a river panning for gold. And when you find that the gold in the river, when you're panning and you find that gold nugget, it's like, wow, this is precious. And the precious thing might be just simply that, wow, this was a mistake, and I'm awake enough to recognize, I'm able to see that, oh, this was something that I should renounce. This is something I should discontinue. This does not support the movement towards liberation. This is actually stepping further into a prison. So the first thing, living skillfully, following the five precepts, avoiding causing harm, avoiding drama. The second one, and this is something that I have seen mature as I've practiced, this second way of how not to have a bad day. And that is seeing everything as an opportunity for insight. whether the experience is pleasant or unpleasant. So whether an experience is pleasant or unpleasant, it's like, here's an opportunity for insight. This is pleasant. Great. See into the nature of that reality. This experience is unpleasant. Fantastic. See into the nature of that reality. This is not something that this quality isn't something that you can masquerade with. You have to have a genuine sense of like really recognizing that, this is, whether something goes my way or something doesn't go my way, if I am aimed towards practicing insight, I'm going to look at that experience and really incorporate it in my practice. Can I see the three characteristics? Can I be with this in a skillful way? So seeing everything as an opportunity for insight. So these two things that I'm sharing with you, this came when I paused and I really just kind of did kind of this self-reflection, taking an inventory of myself and my own practice, and really trying to like, am I practicing right speech when somebody asks me, how are you? And I say, fantastic. Is it hyperbole? Am I exaggerating? Am I not being honest with myself or with others? And I had to really pause and really look at that, and the truth be known, it is, it's just where I'm at. And even when things are challenging and stressful and difficult, my answer will typically be, they're going good. Things are great. And it's because I view challenges as simply challenges. I don't view things as a curse. I view it as a challenge. So there's not a lot of judgment placed on things that don't go my way. And it's really about letting go of preferences. There's some equanimity involved where you're letting go of preference. Let go of a preference for or against anything. And this is something you have to be really honest with yourself about. This isn't something, like I said earlier, this can't be something that you pretend. It can't be something that you masquerade around with. You have to be genuine in how you feel about this. And to the best of, to the degree of awareness that I have, this is something that for me is not fabricated. This is something that I truly feel. Things are great. So how do you begin to explore this? And I think, the answer is mindfulness. But I think there's this real intimacy that needs to happen in your mindfulness practice, because the opportunities to begin to find this non-preferential way of being with things, it's like if there's a painful sensation in the body, investigate this. It's just sensation. Let the sensation be the sensation and investigate it. If there's a pleasant sensation in the body, sometimes that's what's more challenging for people, is to be present and mindful with things as they're going well. A lot of times when we feel stressed and anxious, we've kind of trained ourselves, this is the time that I really need to be mindful. And then these times where things are going fantastic, things are going so well for us, that's where we get a little lazy sometimes. It's like, things are going wonderful. Those are just as valuable. Those are those gold nuggets in the river that deserve our investigation, our attention, our care, just as much when things are not going our way. We can be a little more sensitive to the unpleasant feeling tone, because there's oftentimes it's accompanied with that aversion, that craving in the mind. And a lot of times we might miss the greed in the mind that wants a particular pleasant feeling tone to continue. But as I've said to people before, we can get lost in exuberance with things going well. Things are fantastic, and then we really lose ourselves in that fantastic feeling, because we're not taking it as an opportunity to investigate it. We're not taking it as a, so, things are good, it's okay. Things are bad, it's okay. When you're a meditator, you're looking at all of it as an opportunity to gain insight into the three characteristics: the characteristics of impermanence, the characteristic of dukkha, and the characteristic of emptiness of self. So the intimacy in your mindfulness practice. One example that I gave was, we're all given this example: be mindful when you do the dishes. Well, really being mindful in any activity, being intimate in doing the dishes. And what's that like? And what you'll notice is the subtle preferences. That it's maybe easier for you to hold a plate than it is for you to hold a cup. And so the mind prefers the washing of that plate rather than the washing of the cup, because the cup has a tendency to want to slide out of the hand, and it requires more effort. And so the mind wants to washing these plates, or, this goes quicker. This is easier. And then these cups, being really intimate with, I've used too much soap and everything's so slippery, I can't even grab a hold of it without it slipping. And just the preference of things slipping or things not slipping. It's not just be present with the dishes and notice your mind liking or disliking the whole act of doing dishes. This is kind of this overall view of the activity. There can be a real intimacy in going deeply into the fine qualities of doing the dishes, how things feel, the weight of things, the temperature of the water, the feeling of the suds in the water, being really present in the reaching, the grabbing, the lifting, turning the water on, turning the water off, placing the sponge, the way the body stands at the sink when you're doing the activity, the connection you feel through the soles of your feet, being really present. In other words, taking it as an opportunity for practice, making dishes a meditation. And then, is the mind there for it all? Or is the mind just judging each moment as something, one thing or another? Oh, I'm so mindful. Look at how I'm turning this into a meditation. That's just, the mind doing the same sort of thing that it would do if I hate doing the dishes. I wish I were doing something else. So being really engaged, embodied, recognizing the sensations in the body as you practice doing something like the dishes. Living skillfully, seeing everything as an opportunity for insight. How not to have a bad day. And being really honest with yourself about it. It's not something to be pretentious about. It's not something to fake. It doesn't do you or anyone else any good to try to pretend. So then there's this other area that kind of came up of well, is this really possible for me? My life is filled with, the things that, everybody's kind of preoccupied with, it's job, family, householder type stuff. There can be the thought of, well, if I was a monastic, then it would be possible for me to ensure that I don't have a bad day by really surrounding myself with a lot of attentive focus on the Dharma. But my day is so busy, I can't possibly dedicate myself to being mindful with doing the dishes. I've got a list of other things I have to do. I have to take care of the kids. I have to, run these errands. I have to pay these bills. I have to do this job, all of these sort of things. And what to say? You can do it all mindfully. Or you can sit and make excuses for yourself. You can take it all and make it all part of practice, or you can tell yourself that it's not possible for you. I'm thinking, kind of inspired by Deepa Ma, and how someone was viewing her hanging linen clothes and things like this on a line to be dried, and they just were remarking it. I think it may have even been Jack Kornfield was just remarking at how present, how mindful she was in walking from the laundry basket, taking these clothes and hanging them on the line and walking back and forth, and just the whole process was this beautiful expression of Dharma, beautiful meditation. And there was, in the book about Deepa Ma, there was somebody that kind of, said to her, look, I can't do this. I can't do this practice. I have no time to sit in meditation. And she challenged the person. If it's, I work 7 days a week, I have all these other duties on the weekends. If it comes down to it, when it's really important to you, you will make time to do it. And if you have absolutely so many responsibilities and so many duties in your life that there's no time for sitting practice, then, when you lie down in your bed, then let that last breath that you take before you fall asleep, let that be your practice. Let that be your mindfulness practice. Richard Bach, in one of his books, had something along the lines of, argue for your inadequacies, and sure enough, they are yours. Something along those lines. I'm paraphrasing. But if you really argue for all of the reasons why you can't do something, then sure enough, begin to find reasons that you can do something. So this kind of leads into another aspect of this idea of like, well, if I was a monastic, then I could really live a mindful life. That's how I could ensure that I don't have a bad day. I would surround myself with all of this, just everything in my life would be supportive of practice. Then it would happen. And this made me think of, this made me think of like kind of financial advice that I've been seeing. And the financial thing is simply that if you want more money in your life, there's two ways to go about getting it. If you want more money in your life, here's how you go about doing it. You either spend less, either you be more frugal, or you set about making more money. Those are the two ways. You go out and make more money, or you spend less money, and that's how you end up with more money in your life to do whatever it is you want to do with that money. And so I was thinking, well, let's translate this to Dharma practice. If you want more Dharma in your life, there's two ways to go about it. Simplify your life, or bring in more Dharma. Or you can be really brilliant and do both. So simplify your life. How do you simplify your life? I had a friend once who they were just, it was just feeling overtaxed with everything they had going on. they were, it's like Bilbo Baggins, spreading himself too thin. He was like too little butter spread over too much bread. This whole sense of just there's not enough of me to go around. It's like every night of the week I'm doing something. I'm going out with this person. I'm seeing this person. I've got this event to go to. I've got this going on. And completely missing that, we're the ones who assign the importance to these things that we tell ourselves have to be done in a lot of cases. So these are things that this is kind of the stuff that I'm talking about. We can simplify our life in a way. We don't have to sign up for every event. We don't have to take on every engagement. Then, when we begin to prune some of the frivolous things that we occupy ourselves with, then we inevitably create more space, more room for the truly important things that require our attention. So looking at how can you streamline your life? How can you simplify your life? And then also, well, how can I bring in more Dharma? Instead of doing this event, what about I exchange that event for a Dharma-centered event, a Dharma-focused event? An event where I'm around Sangha members as opposed to being around people that don't encourage and support me being at my best. So do you want more Dharma in your life? Notice how the mind responds to that question. Is it yes right away, or do you take some time to really reflect upon that? Do you want more Dharma in your life? Can you simplify your life? What would that look like to simplify your life? Do you find that the mind is arguing against the things I'm saying? Oh, he does not understand me. He doesn't understand everything I've got going on in my life. There's no way to simplify my life. These things have to be done. I can't possibly bring in more Dharma. I'm doing as much as I possibly can right now. And I guess part of why I'm sharing this with you is as I was reflecting upon some of the questions that were offered to me, I was, kind of looking at what have I done? What have I actually done in my life? How have I moved into this space where I feel like genuinely I'm having a great day? How have I simplified my life? And I think, a great many people know that as I have started a family now, they're all expecting, my life to become difficult or challenging, not difficult, but like, oh, now he's really going to get busy. And now we'll really see, how's his practice going to do with, everything that's now coming his way. And, as I think about this, I'm really this was something that I noticed in my practice years and years ago, even before I bought the house where MOI currently is. So this was back when I had a corporate job. And one of the things that I noticed about my practice that I was practicing was it didn't matter if I was, sitting in this corporate environment, sitting behind this desk, filling out a spreadsheet, or if I was on a walk in the park, if I was on a walk around Zarinsky Lake. It's like I was just present in both of those activities, doing what was needed to be done in that moment, doing what was at hand. And it's not to say that you don't have preferences. You let go of your preferences, but then, if you've got preferences, it's just like you're mindful of them. And you just notice like, oh, here's I can practice right here, right now. There's nothing that can't be met with mindfulness. To be present, aware, and allowing so that you can see into the nature of things. To see not how you would like things to be, but how things actually are. So that you can begin to recognize the fabrications that the mind makes and step into concord with nature, with reality. That's how you go about not having a bad day. So part of simplifying your life, part of bringing in more Dharma is this experience that I'm having. Can it be just the experience without the mind embellishing it, without the mind adding on top of it? You know, there's this kind of instruction of leave the front door and the back door of the mind open so that things can arise and pass away without obstruction, without interference. The way I put this is cleaning experience of delusion. Not adding anything to what is being known. Not embellishing the direct experience. So your direct experience of sitting in an uncomfortable chair is, oh, here's something I can be mindful of. Let me practice being present in this chair. Or let me get up, find another place to sit. But, you know, it's like if I'm going to sit in the chair and recognize the unpleasant feeling tone, or maybe there's, it's the only option, or maybe there's the option to get up and find a more comfortable place, a more comfortable seat, then let me be mindful in the standing up and being comfortable. And can I move to a more comfortable place without the mind, chasing after the idea of there being a more comfortable place? In other words, can I be free in the movement? Or is the mind just trapped in craving, retreating from discomfort, chasing comfort? And I use the example of a chair because hopefully you make the connection to your sitting practice. It's like when I take my seat and I'm on the cushion, am I just practicing suffering? Am I just chasing comfort, retreating from discomfort for my whole meditation practice sitting on this cushion? Or am I really investigating the experience, gaining some insight into the changing nature of experience and finding some freedom in relationship to the discomfort, in relationship to the mind's ideas about things? It's like, oh, this is mind fabricated ideas. There's nothing there to chase after. This sensation, there's nothing there to retreat from because it's changing from moment to moment. Can I see the changing nature? Can I see the dukkha, the way the mind craves, clings, avoids, and forgets? And can I recognize that I'm embellishing to this experience if I'm creating a sense of I that's identified with everything that's going on? It's a very challenging aspect of practice. Cleaning your experience of delusion is a huge area for practice. Can I hear a sound and let there just be the sound without adding, I hear a sound? Can I sit under a tree without this story of I'm sitting under a tree listening to a bird? Can it just be sound being known? Practicing this sort of thing is, some would say, takes lifetimes. But you can just sit. Just sit and observe the mind. Notice if you're living skillfully. Are you following the 5 precepts? If you don't refrain in any of the area of the 5 precepts, what's that like? What's the results? What's it like, that feeling of remorse in the mind and in the body and the heart? And what's it like when you do follow the 5 precepts and you do experience that sense of non-remorse? No remorse. A genuine sense of being carefree, knowing that no harm has been caused, to the best of your awareness. We're always causing harm. Can't live a human life without impacting. But to your awareness, are you, causing the least amount of harm that you can, that you're aware of, and doing your best to be aware as possible? So living skillfully, not causing harm, living with wisdom, wisdom firmly rooted in the Four Noble Truths, an understanding of the Four Noble Truths, an aspiration to understand, to glean the Four Noble Truths. And then are you seeing everything as an opportunity for practice? Is there some equanimity in the mind that doesn't play favorites with each moment's experience? Preferring this over that, chasing this, retreating from that. This is a blessing, this is a curse. Can you just meet the inevitable challenges of life and take it all as an opportunity to gain insight, to gain understanding, a liberating understanding that frees the mind, whether the experience is pleasant or unpleasant? Being present for it all, doing your best to be present with the neutral feeling tones as well. And so if you want more Dharma in your life, can you begin to streamline, prune, simplify the things that you do, the things that you assign importance to? Can you see a little more clearly that is there some room for renunciation in your life with the things that you occupy yourself with? Can there be some simplification? And then how can you introduce more Dharma? How can you bring in more Dharma into your life? A lot of times these sort of questions, it makes this comparison between being a lay practitioner and a monastic. And as I mentioned the last time that I gave a talk, this past weekend, I did another day retreat with my new friend, Bhante Sumedha. And, hearing from him during his Dharma talk, he's a single monastic individual living on his own. And, he's got his list of things he has to do: maintaining the grounds, working on the property, meeting with people, all these sort of things. He's got to provide for himself in a community that doesn't support the monastic lifestyle, but yet he's living as best he can as a monastic. But there's no way to go on alms rounds in this area. So what does one do? The things that you have to do in order to keep on. But if you were to ask, he lives a very simple life. So it's kind of like, well, is it just a matter of like, what's at hand? Is that how I simplify? If I stop doing this, is my life a little more spacious? Is that the simplification? And I think that's just very one-dimensional, because bringing in more Dharma, simplifying your life, it's like, how is your mind? Is your mind cluttered? Are you hoarding things in your mind? Are you hoarding the past? Are you, keeping a ledger of everything that has been said and done that you don't agree with, that you do agree with, or Is your to-do list immense? Is your planning the mind? Is this planning mind just, is it very busy? There's simplifying your life, simplifying, cleaning up your life, cleaning your experience of delusion, being just very present can be very simplifying. And what would it mean for you to bring in more Dharma, reading Dharma? There's so many opportunities through the internet like this where people can listen to Dharma teachers offering instruction online. What are you reading? What are you watching? I watched a really bad documentary just last night. It was great fun though. So it was a Dharma documentary, and we watched the whole thing. But the reason why I say it was bad is because it used this just terrible music. It was so had like three songs that they kept using through the entire documentary, and I'm positive that the music was more suited for like a horror movie than a Dharma movie. But they were going around interviewing all these great Dharma teachers, asking them about the transmission of the Dharma to the West, and then this terrible music would come on with this filler footage that just didn't make any sense. It was the interviews were great. It's great to hear from these great teachers, but man, whoever put that documentary together, wow, that was it was bad. And so, hearing me say, "Oh, it was bad," it's like, yeah, it was bad. It doesn't need to be like this kind of rigid set of like, oh, how am I supposed to do what he's talking about, where I don't have a preference for anything. I think just to, maybe to begin wrapping this up, so sometimes we make this distinction, or we really try to do our best in articulating this distinction between, this quality of craving and having an aspiration, and having a want, or a desire and a want, and to get away from the whole language of, um, is there suffering or not? So can I have a want and can it be free of suffering? Or is there a want and it's wrapped up in suffering? That's that element that we're looking for, is the quality of craving. Craving leads to suffering. So I can have an aspiration, and the example that I've always given is I can have an aspiration to be more compassionate. And there's no suffering tied up in that. I don't feel like, oh my gosh, if I could only be more compassionate, then everything would go my way. If that's how I'm feeling, then there's a quality of, craving in there. And I've now sabotaged this whole well-intentioned aspiration by craving for it. Now there's suffering. Or can it just simply be like, yeah, I want to be a more compassionate person. Let me aspire to be a more compassionate person. And there's no quality of craving in it, and there's no suffering. It's just, yeah, that's the direction I'm moving in. The same can be true for these preferences. I would, I'd prefer to have a yellow curry as opposed to, a McDonald's cheeseburger. There's preference there. I'd rather have this than this. But am I suffering with that preference? Am I tied up in knots over that preference? You have to really be mindful of the whole experience to notice if there's craving, and if there's a resulting suffering out of that. Or can you be free and like sit down and enjoy what's offered? There's going to be some food that for some people doesn't taste good. There's going to be food that for other people tastes really wonderful, very good. There's nothing wrong with pleasant and unpleasant. It's where we launch off of pleasant and unpleasant into craving, where we move from pleasant, oh, this is pleasant, this is good, I enjoy this, it's pleasant, and then we move off of that into greed, the craving that takes us into that suffering. Or, oh, this is unpleasant. I don't want that. It's unpleasant. Can we just experience like, oh yes, unpleasant feeling tone without the whole moving into the aversion towards it? Okay, I am going to end my talk there. Ending a little early because I want to provide some time for everyone there so that you can maybe practice for a few minutes before you take tea and visit with one another. So on the first Tuesday of the month, everyone sticks around for tea. Some things I'll just mention real quickly is that there's a day retreat coming up and a workshop. There's also going to be a newsletter published. So MOI is going to be sending out a newsletter, hopefully tomorrow. That's the plan. And there will be some mention of the day retreat that's coming up this coming weekend and the workshop that's coming up in a couple weeks. I think it's a couple weeks. So you definitely want to make sure that you know what's going on there. And I'm sure somebody, one of the teachers there at the house would be happy to tell you all about it. So thank you all so much for your attention this evening. May the benefit of practice be a cause and a condition for your own liberation and the liberation of all beings. Thank you so much for tuning in with me tonight. Wishing you all a wonderful evening, and I will see you again next time. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.